Howdy folks, it's Darcy from the Purposeful and welcome back to another edition of Drycember, where we take bite-sized chunks out of dehydrating all month long for those of you who are new to dehydrating, who may be interested in learning how to dehydrate, or maybe getting a dehydrator for Christmas. So if you're interested in that kind of content, subscribe below and you'll see more and more of dehydrating throughout this whole series. So today we're talking about when foods are actually dry. So yesterday, 2 days ago, we learned about temperature and how it affects our drying. Yesterday it was all about the time that it takes to dry things. But then you think, but how do I know when it's really dry? So today we're going to talk a little bit about that. And before we get started, down below in the description box, I have 2 links for you to the National Center for Home Food Preservation, information about things that you can read on how to know when your food is dry. What we're going to be covering here today is pretty much a general idea about when foods are dry, but you can get much more specific information there or in any book that you happen to purchase that has information about dehydrating. Down below I'll give a description, I'll give a link, or I'll do it in the iCards, a link to my favorite dehydrating books. Or when you go to my website, every time I do a dehydrating tutorial, I show you the befores and afters and what they should look like, so that you'll always have an idea about what things should look like when they're finished. And by the way, my favorite book has all those pictures, the befores and afters. Just the best book for that, especially for beginners. I'm going to plug it again just because it's so great. This book right here, The Beginner's Guide to Dehydrating Food. The best book for beginners for the before and after pictures. Like all the way through here. It's great. And I'll leave that link down below. When you're dehydrating, you've got, it's a little bit of a subjective thing. You kind of look at things and they look like they're dry, but they may not be. So you need to look for some clues about things and whether or not they're actually dry. For fruits, you have 2 levels. One is soft, is leathery and pliable, which means that it's the kind of fruit that's going to be really high in sugar, like a fruit leather, or if you're doing plums or peaches and you don't want to dry them to the crisp, just breakable stage, you want leathery and pliable, which I don't have any. Oh, wait, cherries, that'll work. Where you want it, where it's completely dry, the outside is leathery so that you have no stickiness, you have nothing that feels like it's all sticking together, it's not tacky, it's leathery, it's good and dry, there's no moisture on it at all. And pliable means you can bend it without breaking, but you want them totally dry. So the best way to check these 2 is to take one of the pieces, cut it in half, and kind of look at the inside to see if you still see moisture. Then you know you need to dry some more. But with a lot of fruits, I dry to the stage of being completely dry, like to the point of hard brittle if I can, because it stores better that way. And if I want it to be a little more pliable when we eat them, I can take out a portion, leave it on a counter covered for like overnight, and let the moisture of the air start to absorb back into that fruit, and it gets a little more pliable. But for the most part, I like everything done pretty dry because it makes for better storage. Now for other fruits, citrus, apples, bananas, everything else, you want dry to the point of being perfectly dry. So I'm going to show you a couple of things. So here I have some citrus that I did last year, right here. And remember when we talked about temperature the other day and whether we have things that if you dry at the right temperature that's suggested, you might get some browning. This citrus was one of those things where I let it go so I could have this as an example of what it looks like. So you drop that temperature down a little bit, you don't get so much of that browning. So, so here is citrus that I have dried. You can see it. Let me see if I can get it to focus right there. Does it focus well? Yeah. The shininess is just membranes, but there is no moisture. And when I break it, it will break apart and snap. You can see the inside. Let me see if it will focus again for you. You can see on the inside there is no moisture. It is clear. And what I love about it is when you hold it up to light, it looks like stained glass. It's so pretty. Think about all those church buildings with those windows in it. That's what it looks like. So that is completely dried citrus. You know it's dry when you bring it to cool. Sorry, I forgot that earlier. When you want to sample it, you want to take it out, allow it to cool completely, and then test it, because the sugars in all of your foods will stay, when they're warm, they stay pliable. Everything's still kind of soft. You want it to come to room temperature and then test it. So the next thing I have are some apple segments that we did. Dried, completely leathery on the outside, crisp enough to break. That's our apples. When you have it that crisp too, it makes it easier to make powders, which we'll talk about a little later in this series. But that's how you want your fruits to be. Okay, either soft and pliable for those things that make sense for cherries, grapes, plums, peaches, fruit leathers. Those are the kind of things you want it to have a little give, because that's what makes the texture more enjoyable. But you have to be careful about that give. Too much give and it's not dry. Then for for vegetables, and here I have here, one of the bigger indicators on any of these is that once you've dried them and you drop them on a countertop, you want to hear it ping, not plunk. There's a difference in the sound of something that's still wet versus something that is completely dry. It has a hollow kind of ping to it, but also something that you can test, just as with everything else. When you have taken it out to cool it, you want things that will break, depending on what it is. This cauliflower does not like to break up. My broccoli just shatters. Try to get to something else down here. No, that was broccoli and cauliflower. Those broccoli stem bits don't shatter as well for me. Let's see. Then you have things like this dry fruit. That way you can tell that all those pieces are completely translucent and they are ready and dry. So that's how you know when vegetables are dry. Take them out, let them sit, cool off, either taste them, because some things you can taste and you know how it is. Marshmallows are one of those things that you actually need to taste more than anything. If you throw a marshmallow in your mouth and it shatters completely and it doesn't gum up, it's dry. Okay, so with vegetables, it's the same way. They should plink when you drop them on a countertop. They should snap if you have bigger pieces. Let me try to see if I have anything else up there. With herbs, it's the same way. They should crush. When you've dried them, you've allowed them to come to room temperature, they should just dissolve in your hands when you crush them. So that's when you know they're really dry. So then, once you're dry, and you know it's dry, say it with me, folks who've been doing this for a while. What's the next step? Conditioning. That's what we'll talk about tomorrow. So thanks for stopping by today. I have yesterday's videos here. Then I have a whole playlist here. You can subscribe to the channel here. Tomorrow we'll talk about conditioning and how it affects our storage. And that way we know that everything is totally dry. But that's always the next step. Don't ever miss that conditioning step. It's really important. See you tomorrow.